83% of ERGs are running social events. How do you stop your ERG just being seen as optional? That's what we're going to get into in today's video. I am Sheryl Miller and this is ERG Strategy, the channel that helps you build effective, engaged employee resource groups and communities that make a difference. So if this is what you're interested in, please do subscribe because you're in the right place. We put out videos on a Tuesday and I go live every Friday morning at 8:30 here and on LinkedIn. So please do, subscribe, hit the notification bell, give us a thumbs up if you are enjoying the videos. Write us some questions, right? And I'm gonna, all of these videos are based on the questions that you ask. So this is a question we were asked on a recent webinar. We were asked, how do we stop our ERG from just being seen as a social club? And I think we all know what that looks like, right? So we're going to get into this and I'm going to cover a few things today. So I'm going to cover the statistics. First of all, what ERGs are actually doing. Then I'm going to talk about why events aren't the problem, right? So why events aren't the problem. I'm also going to talk about the risks of only being social. So what are the risks of being this social club? And then we're going to finish off with how to make your events more meaningful. Right, so first of all, the statistics, what ERGs are actually doing. So, you know, I love the data and the statistics, right? We ran our ERG leader survey at the start of 2025 and we asked people, what are you doing? And you can see in the chart that we've got 90% of people running awareness day events, and then second to that, 83% are running social events. So more than 4 out of 5 are running social events, 73% networking events. I mean, you could argue that maybe for some people their social events are their networking, but you know, we did distinguish. And then only 42% in things like policy reviews, 18% in reverse mentoring. What do we mean by social events? Here's the thing. So for some networks, they will, like whether it's on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, they will literally have food and drink, you know, and it could be in the office or it could be, you know, at a sort of bar or a restaurant or cafe nearby, but they're literally getting people together just to come together and talk and have food and drink, right? That's what we're talking about in terms of social events. So there is, you know, there's no speaker, there's no content, there's no like sort of formal networking or anything like that. They're just coming together. There's a real risk that you just end up being like, you know, the party planner as an ERG leader, and you can maybe sense, you know, when that's starting to happen, you know, if all of your to-do list literally looks like you're just planning parties, okay? So this is the thing. For 4 out of 5 ERGs, they are heavily doing social events, and the majority of ERGs are not doing anything beyond events, right? If you look at it, because the majority are just doing awareness days, social events and networking, and it's a minority that are doing things like policy reviews, reverse mentoring, 50-50-ish doing like the training thing, but lots of ERGs are only doing events, right? So those are the statistics, and that is part of the problem. And if you think about things like, for example, the fact that budgets are being cut, one of the reasons maybe budgets are being cut is that people are looking at what ERGs are doing and they're saying, what is the return on investment? Are we literally just paying for individuals to get together socially? That's maybe part of the issue. However, let me not come down too hard on events, because events per se are not the issue, and I'll tell you why not. So events aren't all bad. They can have a role to play in terms of creating visibility, right? They can create visibility. They can create real memorable moments for the whole organisation, not just for the members and for the community. They bring people together, right? Especially when so many people are working hybrid and remote and all of that kind of thing. Events bring people together, and a core part of what ERGs are there to do is to create community. And actually, if your events are also open up to allies as well, which of course in 2025 most events now should be open to allies. So those events are quite key actually in terms of building community, and it's really important that that happens for ERGs, because otherwise how do you create a place of safety or a place that somebody can you know, come to for advice or information, or how do you create that trust so that if somebody's got something going on they can call somebody up and say, you know, have you been through that? So this is the role that events can play. They can help to build community, trust and relationships, okay? So they have their role. However, when the events are only social, here are some of the risks. So the risks of just being social, as I said, in this here current DI backlash, if people are looking at you as an ERG, and there will be, many organisations, people will be looking at the ERGs and what they do. If those are seen as only social, there's a danger that your ERG is almost just seen as being like fluffy, like what is that about? I know that very unfairly actually, some people have tried to almost like reduce ERGs to like lanyards and things like that, right? We need to change that narrative, and one of the ways that we change that narrative is we don't only have social events, and actually we don't have any event that is just only social, right? We bring something else to that event so that it's not literally just food and drink, okay? Because those are the risks. The other risk actually, if your events are only social and if your calendar is overloaded with social events, there is a risk of burnout. And I tell you why there's a risk of burnout, not just in terms of the work that it takes to organise the social events and get people to the events, etc. But there's something about social events don't really tend to move the dial very much in terms of some of those other big objectives that you've got as an ERG, or tackling some of the fundamental problems around inclusion and progression and, access to opportunities, etc. Social events don't move the dial significantly. So if you're focusing all of your energy on those social events and then actually you see that things aren't changing a lot, that actually in itself will lead to a lot of stress and a lot of fatigue and a lot of frustration, and that contributes to burnout. So I know it's a strange way of thinking about it, but yeah, if you're investing all of your time only in the social events and nothing else, you will start to feel burned out, partly because you're not seeing other results. So that's something to think about in terms of the dangers of over-investing in social events. Now here's how to make those social events more meaningful. So how to make your events more meaningful. The first thing that I'm going to recommend, and I think this is the biggest game changer, start inviting senior leaders to every single event. I don't care if you only see it as like a social mixer and you want it to be a safe space and all of this sort of stuff. Start inviting a senior leader. If you invite a senior leader, I guarantee there will be content. You will start to put more structure into your social events. And it could literally just be that the senior leader comes and shares for 10 minutes their career journey and some pivotal things that happen to them. But even just doing that, having that little bit of content, just imagine then the conversations that senior leader can then have with members of the network and or the committee, right? Because they've come and they've changed the tone of the conversation, right? It could be, if you invite a senior leader along, obviously there's always like a fireside chat format that you can do with the senior leader, and that could be the senior leader with a member or a committee member. And again, what you're doing there is you're creating opportunities again for individuals that are associated with the network to do something that's a little bit different, right? So they're getting out of their comfort zone a bit. It's a bit of a development opportunity. So that small thing, inviting a senior leader in, makes a massive difference, and that in itself, you will start to up your game in terms of what you're doing with these events. The other thing that you can do is you can theme the events. So even if you don't have a senior leader, right, give the event a theme, and you could potentially then start to seed ideas into conversations. So the theme could be about the world of work generally, and it could be about, I don't know, something like AI or ways of working, remote versus hybrid. How do we maintain company culture when everybody's remote, etc. It could be something like that. It could be very specific to something that your organisation is currently sort of struggling with at the moment around product or service or customer. But you could theme the event. You could potentially get then a speaker from another department to come and talk about that particular issue. And then you can still have the social, you can still have people chatting, whatever, but you've brought some content to it. So again, it has a purpose. People are potentially going to learn when they're there, which is great. But basically, you've reduced the risk of people looking at your events, etc., and saying that they have no purpose, they have no point, and they have no ROI. So those are some of the ways that you can make your events more meaningful. The other thing you can do is make sure that you add an element of networking that maybe is a little bit more facilitated. This is something that we started doing with the ERG Leader Summit. More facilitated networking, whether that's speed networking, where you put certain people in one part of the room and then another set of people, and then they've got to switch, or you give people a number, you assign them a number, and then they've got to go to a certain part of the room and all have a discussion about something. But basically, you know, force more conversation between people that maybe don't know each other and work in different teams, because there are certainly benefits to that. So those are some of the things that you can do to make your events more meaningful. Not forgetting, you should be collecting feedback after every single event. After every event, you should be collecting feedback, and you should be asking individuals, what would you like to see more of? And that's one of the ways that you will get ideas to make the events more relevant or more meaningful. So those are some of the things that you can do. What else can you do apart from events to be strategic? I've mentioned some of them in these statistics. So some of the other things that other ERGs are doing, obviously they're doing training and development programs. They are doing things like mentoring, reverse mentoring, formal sponsorship programs. If you've watched any of my other videos and you've heard me talk about Balance, which is my latest book, you know, one of the things I talk about is when you look at the year and you're planning in quarters, because I'm a big fan of planning in quarters, you know, have just one hero or one flagship event, you know, kind of put all your eggs in that one thing. Then have one policy that you're going to tackle in a quarter. So one policy, obviously you're not the policy owner, so you're going to work with the policy owner to maybe amend that policy in a way that is better benefit to your members and your community and the wider organisation. So you've got one policy, one process. So one process that you're going to amend or change, again for the benefit of the organisation and for your members and for colleagues. And then one collaboration, either internally with another department where you as an employee resource group are going to make yourself useful, or an external collaboration, either with a major customer, a major supplier, or a charitable organisation, or a school, or a college. There are so many other things that you can do as an employee resource group. It really doesn't have to just be just around social events. Okay, book clubs. See, there's a book club I got invited to a couple of weeks ago. This book club, I think they said something like they've run, I want to say like over 30 of these book clubs. It's just something that has now got a life of its own, and people come together for very deep conversations. It doesn't actually happen during work time, it happens in an evening, which I think that in itself is interesting. But if you like that sort of thing, you know, book clubs, TED Talk clubs. I've even heard recently of a Netflix and discussion club, right? All kinds of things that you can do. We just need to get a little bit creative. If you've got something really creative that you do as an employee resource group that you've never heard anybody else do, please do drop it in the comments. Give us some ideas and some inspiration. Hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you again on Friday when I go live, but please do take care and go with grace. Bye.